they had invited me to speak at their European conference in Krakow, and they asked me to argue for AI and automation. And they had somebody else who was arguing against, it's going to destroy the world. So I had developed I've always been interested in technology. Then I had to sort of understand that and get behind that. And then I had the opportunity to do a TEDx, and this seemed like a really good subject to talk about. So my TEDx was about the ethics of automation. And I kind of talked about bias. I talked about the chance of us losing jobs, and the angle that I took was that it shouldn't be scary. It gives us new opportunities. It gives us the opportunities to do things that are more empathetic, to do things that only humans can do. So I did really want to get that message out there.
So was this in 2019? No, what year was this?
This was 2019.
2019. So and it was one of the topics I wanted to cover. So in 2023, where we are now, the reason I say that is that this gets pre-recorded and it'll live on the internet forever. Anyway, so this year we've had ChatGPT launch. There's a whole range of large language models out now. We've got a lot of the creative AI tools where there's loads of ethics around that as well. And actually, one of the things that I've genuinely looked at is that, it's some of the video stuff where you can speak different languages. You have synthesized people, like a deep fake, that now I could, if I wanted to, get a digital me that can replicate me and do all kinds. But the point is, it's exploded. And if anything, it's only going to exponentially increase. One of the big things that I know I've been really and this is just this week, trying to really figure out is that how there was an article, there was a post about Levi's. So Levi's have said that they're going to embrace diversity and using 100% AI automated models, have different women and people with different backgrounds model their clothes. But the whole point was they're not paying any humans to any black models. They're not real people, but what that's going to do is actually impact. My first business was photography, so I know a lot about photography, but it's going to impact photography, people that do lighting, people that have venues, people that do catering for venues, models themselves. And what I'm really worried about is even down to copywriters, graphic designers, whichever. Now, I'm worried that almost every job in the world is going to be at risk, because actually, rather than me pay £2,000 to hire some creatives, come up with an event and go and do it, I could actually just go to my AI tool, make me an image that looks like this. And if I'm not happy, I can tweak it, change the description. But it's like, that's real, because in theory, I spend a lot of money for my startup and business hiring people to do stuff. If I chose a different path, I could just save all that money, invest in the tool, and they're out of a job. And I just don't, from an ethics point of view on AI, that kind of stuff, what's your take on it? Am I worrying too much, or?
Maybe a little bit too much, but it's genuine. And I think things will happen that makes it, there are jobs that weren't previously thought of. So when we talk about how do we educate kids as to what they can be, there are some jobs that we don't even know they can be yet. Who is going to be the interface between the AI and the humans? Chief interface officer and things like that we don't know yet. So I think there will be new jobs. That's one thing. I think some people who are in the field where jobs will be eroded are looking at how they can take some of their profits and retrain people in other ways to do other things. And I think so that's important. If you are going to save money by avoiding using people, how do you create education programs so that people can do the new jobs? And those jobs are more of the emotional jobs.
But so I can see why a government who have to look after the overall population might look at that retraining. But it's that we're both commercial backgrounds. We both know organisations that if they currently have an overhead of £1 million a year, but actually through efficiencies and new tools, they can halve that and massively increase their net profit, they're probably going to do it, especially if it's outsourced stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a genuine worry that the irony is that I love creative stuff. I love working with creative people, and especially on LinkedIn at the moment, you get photographers and people saying, look what I've created with this AI tool. But the irony is then it's like, well, I don't need to pay you £800 for a photo shoot. I could pay the £6 and do it myself.
Yeah.
And it's
So
it's
I
a
think,
genuine thing. I think a lot of people will debate.
and I think we need it as a society to start to reset the expectations. Maybe we could, instead of people having jobs and careers, maybe we can, those people who are making the money can support those who aren't to do things like be companions for the elderly and do other things. We don't necessarily need to be making money
Do
for
you
ourselves.
think, being honest, that that'll happen? I
In pockets, yes, I do.
okay.
There are people like you who's doing this podcast, and me who's taken the time to join it,
Yeah.
because I do really believe in that. And I think probably, I'm hoping that the younger generation seems to care much more
Mm-hmm.
about community and things like that than in the
Okay.
80s, where it was all about money. So I'm hoping that society can evolve in ways that will accommodate AI. I do think regulation for it is really, really important. And I do think we need to think about these things, and we're not thinking about them.
Mm-hmm.
I think when I gave my talk just 4 years ago, it didn't seem very real to the people of
I'd
Newcastle
say
who were in the
6 months
audience.
ago, it was that balance of where I'm quite up on like tech stuff, but this is the first time it really hit home, and it was like, wow. And it's just,
Yes.
it's the way it's because I watched, there's a guy who runs one of the major companies who's given interviews on like Forbes, and basically they're also purposely throttling back their deployment because they know people will get scared, and if they don't tease it out slowly, regulation and governments will just shut it down altogether. And I think ChatGPT is already banned in Italy. I think it was Italy. But it was almost, because the other thing that got me is that with the worry is, and it was the classic science fiction thing from 70s and 80s, where I worry that the world will tend more into the haves and have-nots. So you're going to have more developed nations embrace these technologies quicker than developing nations. But then it's that ability that you'll have people in developing nations that are graphic designers and built their life on it, and then someone from Newcastle or Silicon Valley sells into Africa and just, I worry that we're going to actually have more wage inequality because of things like AI. Because the prime example was that with, Neuralink, which is Elon Musk's one of his many startups. So for anyone that doesn't know, it's an implant, a chip on the brain that can both help you process stuff. It's also designed to help with motor neuron diseases and lots of positive things. But the idea is that people who can afford it can actually, in theory, connect their mind to the internet. This is like in the future, but again, it gives you an advantage based on money and different things against everyone else. And I worry in a way that we're going to have more disparity between rich and poor.
So that I can't see into the future, so I don't know how it'll turn out, but I hope it'll be different. But one of the things that I might challenge from what you've just said is that some of the developing nations can actually leapfrog the current developed nations. They're working on it. I was lucky enough to spend some time in Rwanda, working in Rwanda, and Cameroon and a few other places. You can see that they can actually accelerate and do better than we are, the place they're at now. So I don't necessarily think it'll increase the divide that we have now, but there could be different divides.
I absolutely 100% want just a level playing field for everyone. Because the irony is, from a business strategy point of view, that say if we take universities, one of the disadvantages that universities have in 2023 is that they have £300 million worth of assets, overheads, buildings that a lean startup doesn't necessarily have, but you can actually target the same market. The point being that if you're in Cameroon, Rwanda, you might not necessarily be tied to legacy systems that people don't want to give up on, which then in itself, if you're innovative, can give you the advantage, because it's the whole sunken cost fallacy thing of where when people are trying to embrace new things. And the prime example, obviously Meta / Facebook have been trying to launch the metaverse. In theory, you could create the world's best metaverse hospital, school, entertainment thing from Rwanda, because it's not real. So I'm with you. I just, part of the reason why I love to do this is to speak to smart people and almost debate different issues, because I think it's because it's topical and it's happening right now. It's a really interesting thing.
It's almost overly discussed at the moment, and there is some scaremongering, and actually people are turning off from it because it's becoming boring. But we need to get the balance back. These things absolutely need to be top of mind and being discussed and regulated and managed. How will it turn out? I don't know. I'd like to come back in 100 years and see what's happened.
Oh, cool.